Very excited to be here this morning talking about the ultra-affluent market in Asia. I'm going to direct my comments mostly on China, but by all means ask me any questions. Let's try to make this interactive as it is first thing in the morning regarding where the market's going. The slides I have are only for reference, so I'm going to try to add a little bit here in terms of what's happening today. For those of you who do know WealthX, we're headquartered in Singapore. I'm the CEO of the organization. We have 12 different offices globally that focus on understanding, tracking, profiling the world's ultra wealthy, of which we estimate there is approximately 200,000 or so of those individuals, about 43,000 of them in Asia. Earlier this year, we started to track a trend, and this was post-U.S. election as well as post-China Congress, where we saw a return to liquidity. So while there is a tremendous amount of net worth that's out there and being created every day in lots of markets, especially Asia, the real, I think, question for us and for looking at new buyers of aircraft and for possibly even charter as well, is those who have liquidity, right? So nice that someone has $300 million, but unless it's liquid, it probably doesn't matter too much to what we're trying to achieve. And so we saw late last year and beginning of this year is a return to liquidity. The markets became a bit better, looking at the equity markets and thus the private company comparables where a lot of individuals have their wealth tied up in Asia. We predicted in the beginning of Q3 and Q4 seeing some of the transactions take place, so we're beginning to see some of those. We think it's going to be a bit of a choppy market in individuals realizing some of the value of their privately held companies, but we are beginning to see some of those events. So people selling parts or all of their company, putting cash back in their pockets, and then being able, hopefully, later Q3, Q4, to be able to spend that capital, whether it's investing in other businesses, acquiring, or acquiring aircraft. So that's where we are, if you will, in the continuum right now of wealth in Asia broadly. You know, as we look at where the money is, and apologies for the bit of an eye chart, I'll narrate this. As I mentioned, there are about 43,000 or so ultra high net worth individuals in Asia. And that's defined as people who've got a net worth of 30 million US dollars and above net assets, right? So that's going to include the privately held company, include cash, include residences, and so forth. For our conversations, I'm sure we're interested in people who have a bit more money than that. In terms of where it's been historically, that's been Japan. So Japan has about 11,000 or so ultra high net worth individuals and has stayed pretty close to that number for the last several years and sees basically no chance of changing that number substantially. In Asia, China has become number one, so about 12,000 or so ultra high net worth individuals. Started the year at sub 12,000 that we've been tracking, and now we expect by year end we'll end up at about 12,500 or so ultra wealthy individuals. Just by comparison's sake, if you look at the markets, U.S. is about 60,000 or so ultra high net worth individuals to compare. We're also tracking the billionaires, and clearly there are a lot more billionaires out there than I think most of us read about or track on a daily basis. U.S. Historically has had the highest number of billionaires. Germany has been number 2 by headcount. China, we expect this year, will surpass Germany as the number 2 place for billionaires globally. We have a report coming out. It's freely available, so this is not marketing. It will come out in a few months' time, and that will have the actual stats for the number of Chinese billionaires that have come onto the scene. So we're seeing, not surprisingly, an increased amount of wealth and growth for the China market. Now, as many people have been describing, and this is very much the case, our clients who are either luxury brands or private banks or in the aircraft business have been trying to de-risk themselves to some extent from China. And so as they look around Asia and the other markets, they look toward India, certainly, of which there are about 8,000 ultra high net worth individuals. Indonesia, which has a relatively small base, but it's fastest growing, at around about 1,000 plus. And of course, markets like Singapore and Hong Kong, where there are individuals who are passing through, if I can use that term, establishing residence, thinking about the next generation and where parts of their family sit, study, or reside, and accessing those individuals. So we're seeing more of that happen in terms of activity. For example, at a place like Singapore, where I hear more and more Russian accents every day. So the wealth story continues broadly in Asia. I'm going to skip a number of the slides just so I can get to the meat of the matter. The big trend as we look globally is about the number of these ultra-wealthy individuals and where they are globally. As I said, the West, if you will, is where that's been the highest density. North America accounts for about 65,000, as I mentioned, Asia at about 44,000. In the next 10 years or so or less, we expect that Asia will surpass that number in the West. So we'll hit that 65,000, 67,000 number threshold in Asia and continue to go pretty far beyond. Strategically, we think a number of our clients, who I see some of you in our room today, know that we're predicting that a permanent shift will happen. We're at the front end of a 150-year wealth creation cycle in Asia. We're only about 12 to 15 years into that in Asia, and so these numbers will only get much bigger in terms of the ultra-wealthy population we have here. We also, in addition to aircraft, track other assets individuals have. And so a question we often get asked is what else is in their product bag? What else are they spending money on? What other assets have they acquired other than the disposable type, the fashion, jewelry, and so forth? And that's art by far. So this is a chart just noting the opportunity for asset holdings, right? So luxury assets, which we would include aircraft as part of that equation. This is directly held by individuals or pretty clearly defined SPVs around individuals. And in looking at their spending, we're finding that, again, art is the place to be. So we often get asked the question, where should we continue to develop relationships? How do we, in fact, engage potential buyers in this marketplace? And it still is all about the art. I think indicative that Art Basel bought the Hong Kong show. That just gives you one indicator of the fact that art still is the connecting point, if you will, for a large number of ultra-wealthy individuals globally, but especially in Asia and Hong Kong. These stats are available by slides if you'd like them. Talk about the number of individuals by wealth tier. So if you're thinking about the individuals who can afford certain types of equipment, you're looking at a purchase, personal buy, or via their mostly held or closely held companies. This gives you a sense of the statistics. Again, these are all available on slides, and I'm happy to share these numbers. But this is a pretty regular pyramid, if you will, and we expect this to continue to round itself out as a pyramid with a pretty good base, middle, and upper echelon of wealth. No big surprises here. China ultra-wealthy population continues to grow. In fact, growing faster than the, faster and or about the GDP numbers. We think this is going to continue unabated for several years to come. In fact, there's been lots of talk, of course, about how the recent measures may have cooled the marketplace, but we haven't seen that really slow down individuals being able to aggregate either net worth or liquidity to their bottom line. Not yet, at least. Luxury spending continues to grow. These are most of the stats that I wanted to get to. What I will share, I think this may be interesting from a relationship development standpoint and how people go about either selling aircraft or all of the associated services that go along with the transaction or happen after the fact. It's around the relationships. So when we have done studies and analyzed the number of relationships that individuals who own aircraft have, we find that, perhaps not surprisingly, those who have aircraft have a lot of friends. We see that much more so than those who are buying yachts, for example, in Asia, in China, and other markets. These people are extremely well connected. And so as we look at the patterns and the clustering, if you will, of buyers, we find that it happens around friends, if you will, right? So looking at these patterns, these clusters, and identifying those individuals who are buying, if I can say as a group, over time. There's some basic demographics here about the average buyers. This is global, by the way, not just for Asia. I think I've got the Asian numbers elsewhere, but the average net worth is $390 million, average liquidity 85 million, and average age is 64 years old, globally mostly male and mostly married, and perhaps not surprisingly, mostly self-made. How this differs from the average ultra-wealthy, the biggest difference I think is the average age. So the average age globally for ultra-wealthy non-aircraft owners is in the mid-50s, so about a decade older on balance for the average aircraft buyer. And we had just a few examples of the average, so to speak, buyers here in Asia. So I encourage you to, A, ask questions if you have them, if we have time this morning, about the markets and where they're going in terms of the wealthy individuals themselves, I haven't gotten into depth around markets like Malaysia, for example, but again, I think there's lots of opportunity around the region. China, of course, notably, but a lot of opportunities elsewhere. So, thank you very much.